Hey guys, tonight we dive into the fluffiest, most unnecessary drama Mount Olympus has ever seen. The wind is soft, the stars are out, and somewhere above you, a god is sulking because their cloud doesn't have enough glitter. You're floating, sort of, weightless in a sleepy mist that smells faintly of lavender and burnt ambrosia. The gods are gathered in their celestial break room, feet up on constellations, robes pressed but passive-aggressive. And you've somehow gotten a front row seat to the cloud showdown of the century. You probably won't survive this. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's so absurdly boring, your brain may just drift into a gentle coma halfway through Poseidon's 14-minute speech on marine moisture levels. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. Always fun to see who else is drifting off under the same sleepy sky. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge up the final cloud step leading to the Council of Olympus, your sandals squelching with each step because Zeus still refuses to install proper drainage. The meeting has already begun, or at least it's already begun being delayed. Zeus stands at the front, arms crossed, toga slightly wrinkled, beard somehow both majestic and frizzy from static. He raises his hand, commanding silence, or at least enough of it to drown out Apollo's lute tuning. "Fellow immortals," he says, with the exasperation of someone who's tried group scheduling apps before, "we are gathered to decide a matter of great importance: who gets the best clouds." Hera groans from her cloud lounger. Honestly, who cares? Just pick something fluffy and move on. "You don't care," Ares says, adjusting his helmet, "because you already get the thick storm clouds every time you're mad." "Which is always," mutters Dionysus, swirling something fizzy in a chalice labeled "not wine, it's wine." But Zeus, undeterred by the bickering, slams a thunderbolt-shaped gavel onto a puff of cirrus that explodes like a shaving cream commercial. This time, it must be fair. No more arbitrary cloud assignments. We vote, we rank, we award. Hestia, who's knitting quietly in a corner, raises her hand. "Can we at least define what makes a cloud best? Is it softness, weather control, nap potential?" Hermes zips by overhead, already balancing a stack of spreadsheets. Or resale value. Let's not forget resale value. And just like that, the meeting spins into chaos, as 12 gods and several lesser-known immortals begin loudly debating what qualities matter most in a divine cloud. You settle onto a slightly soggy nimbus and prepare yourself for sleep, or for a level of pettiness not seen since Hera renamed a star system just to annoy Zeus. In the background, somewhere behind the cirrostratus bar, a harpy makes cloud sculptures of Cerberus. No one notices. Historians still argue whether this fabled council ever happened, or if it was simply a misinterpreted storm pattern. But several ancient scrolls do mention something called the Foggy Incident. So maybe, just maybe, you're witnessing a piece of mythological trivia that no mortal was ever supposed to see. Eris proposes that the best cloud should inspire terror from 500 meters. He gestures to a chunky thunderhead with what might be built-in flaming swords. It hisses quietly, like it's judging you. Aphrodite reclines further into her fainting cumulus. "Darling, that looks like a migraine."
Meanwhile, Apollo, shining obnoxiously even indoors, raises a hand. "If we're ranking clouds, shouldn't I go first? Mine literally glow." "No one wants to sleep in a retina-scorching sun cloud," Artemis shoots back, already yawning into her sleeve. "Speak for yourself," Hermes says, flipping through a real estate scroll. "Sun clouds are hot this century, good for scroll photos." You drift a little, lulled by the gentle static of divine tension. The cloud beneath you puffs upward, then deflates slightly. Someone forgot to close the updraft valve. Probably Hephaestus. Oh, and yes, Hephaestus is here too, tinkering away in the corner with what looks like a cloud juicer. He doesn't speak, but every few minutes a machine puffs out a small marshmallow cloud with a smell that could be vanilla or melted bronze. Over by the snack table, which consists of an eternally floating fig tree and a self-replenishing honey fountain, Demeter's having a mild breakdown. "I just want clouds that water wheat evenly. Is that so much to ask?" she cries, clutching a tiny cloud sprayer that mists oat milk every 30 seconds. "You're all missing the point," Athena says, standing up with scrolls in hand. "Clouds should serve intellectual function, strategic surveillance, maybe even double as book storage." Hades, yes, he's here too, even though no one invited him, mutters from a gloomy corner. "I use mine to smother hope. Works great." Everyone pretends not to hear that. A mainstream historical fact? Sure. Ancient Greeks actually believed the gods lived atop Mount Olympus, above the clouds, and controlled the weather. They told detailed stories about deities assigning tasks like lightning and wind, like bored middle managers with control issues. Fringe tidbit? There's a minor philosopher, Thespidus of Delphi, who once theorized that clouds were simply the gods' dirty laundry piles, vaporized from embarrassment. No one took him seriously, but his theory did explain the oddly sock-shaped cloud formations over Thebes. Anyway, the council drags on. Each god now has a tiny nameplate in front of them, balanced precariously on a cloud puff. Someone's drawn a mustache on Apollo's, probably Hermes. Zeus sighs and tries again. "Let's keep it simple. Submit your nomination for Best Cloud by Sunset. Criteria: style, comfort, divine energy conductivity, and miscellaneous pizzazz." "Does moisture absorption count as pizzazz?" Hestia asks, still knitting. "Absolutely," Zeus says, without understanding the question. "By the time the first hour ends, you've heard more about humidity ratios than any mortal ever should." The cloud beneath you gently rocks, like a sleepy gondola, and somewhere nearby, a small Pegasus curls up on a dew pillow and begins to snore. Above you, Apollo is trying to install harp strings into a cirrus strand. Hermes is selling cloud-based sleep enhancers to bored muses. Dionysus is floating upside down, singing to a cloud shaped like a goat. And Hera? She's already left, muttering something about divine nonsense and "I'm going to bed." The sun begins to sink, casting golden beams through stratocumulus like melted butter over toast. The gods are still arguing. You're barely awake. But don't worry, we've only just started this delightfully unnecessary saga.
You shift slightly on your borrowed cloud, which makes an indignant squish like a damp sofa cushion. Apparently, this one's designed for mid-range immortals and disgruntled nymphs, and let's just say, the lumbar support is not Olympian. Meanwhile, the gods have moved on to the next order of business, defining the criteria for what makes a cloud the best. And shockingly, this part is even more convoluted than the arguing. Zeus clears his throat for what feels like the 15th time. "We cannot proceed until we agree on the metrics." He gestures vaguely, which causes a flock of cloud doves to scatter. Athena immediately conjures a scroll that unrolls across 3 clouds and smacks Hermes in the face. "I've prepared a preliminary rubric: comfort, durability, tactical application." "Boring," Dionysus groans. He's somehow installed a hammock between 2 storm clouds and is sipping something out of a melon with a straw. Where's the sparkle rating? "Functionality trumps frivolity," Athena replies with the deadly tone of someone who alphabetizes their enemies. "Oh, please," says Aphrodite.
now reclined so far back in her rose-scented cirrus that she's nearly horizontal. If it doesn't feel like a gentle kiss from a blushing breeze, I'm not interested. Hades, still lurking in the shade like a brooding art student, offers, I think clouds should contain just enough despair to remind mortals they're not gods. Cool, says Hermes, love that for you. He whips out a quill and starts scribbling on a parchment that appears to be labeled Cloud Score Beta Version. You crane your neck and spot the following categories. Fluffiness, 1 to 10. 1 equals dry parchment, 10 equals angelic marshmallow. Weather potential, thunder, hail, spooky mist. Nap compatibility, evaluated by nymph volunteers. Divine resonance, does the cloud respond to divine presence or just fizzle like a wet firework? Aesthetic drama, includes hue, sparkle, and epicness. Don't forget multi-use options, Demeter says. Can it grow herbs, double as a shade for wheat fields, support seasonal planting cycles? Demeter, no one is trying to farm on a cloud, Apollo mutters. That's not even how altitude works. Don't pretend you know how altitude works, Artemis says. This sparks a minor sidebar argument about how tall Mount Olympus actually is. Historians still argue whether the original myths referred to the real-world mountain in Greece or a metaphorical space that exists beyond mortal comprehension. Most lean toward the metaphorical theory, but one rogue scholar from the 3rd century insisted Olympus was just a really bougie volcano. Meanwhile, Hera, who has returned from her dramatic exit, is now advocating for atmospheric elegance, a phrase she says must include at least one peacock feather and a touch of thunderous menace. Zeus tries to get everyone back on track. Let's take a quick vote. Raise your hand if you believe softness should be the #1 priority. Aphrodite, Hestia, and an extremely fluffy-looking satyr raise their hands, or hooves. Okay, what about durability? Athena, Eris, and a random dryad who wandered in from a nearby fig orchard. Sparkle? Dionysus raises both hands and a foot. Apollo does the same, but adds a dramatic cloud light show to underscore his passion. Nap quality? Hestia, Demeter, Artemis, and you. Yes, you somehow raise your hand too, though it's unclear how you were counted.
Zeus looks exasperated. What we have here, he says, waving his arms over the voting chaos, is a complete lack of consensus. No surprise there, Hermes mutters. This is why we can't even agree on who gets what corner of the sky. Apollo spins dramatically on his golden cloud. I should get the east. Sun rises there. That's literally me. Oh, and sunsets don't matter, snaps Artemis from her perch on a moonbeam, because guess who handles those? I'm fine with the north, Athena says calmly. Chill winds are good for thinking. Dionysus yawns. Can I have the west? It feels vaguely rebellious. Technically, you should be underground, Hera reminds Hades. Hades just smiles, slow and unsettling. Technically, everyone should be underground, eventually. You stifle a yawn, not from boredom, okay, maybe a little from boredom, but mostly because the constant puffing and floating and divine debating has the rhythm of ocean waves and bureaucratic lullabies. Your cloud shifts under you like a half-deflated beanbag. Hermes skids back into the circle. Okay, I've got it. Everyone submits one cloud design. We'll evaluate each entry across 5 categories. Score out of 10. Winner gets top cloud. Runners-up get moderately satisfactory cloud assignments. Losers get, well, haze. Can I add a category for musical resonance? Apollo asks. No, says everyone, including the cloud. One mainstream fact for your sleepy brain: in Greek mythology, clouds were often depicted as both literal and metaphorical elements.
They could be the veil of Hera, the chariot trails of gods, or the hiding places of mortals in trouble. The ancients were a bit obsessed with the sky, and who could blame them? Free real estate. Now, here's your quirky tidbit. There's a little-known myth about Bellerophon, yes, the flying horse guy, who tried to ride Pegasus all the way to Olympus but was stopped by Zeus. Supposedly, the cloud that knocked him off wasn't lightning, but a sentient puff named Barry, who specialized in dismounting hubris. Barry is not widely worshipped. Back to the council, where Hermes is now distributing tiny cloud-shaped scorecards and miniature styluses carved from lightning splinters. Every god gets one, including Hades, who stares at his like it owes him money. There's a break in the action as Hephaestus distributes tiny cloud testers, each the size of a small pillow and labeled with ridiculous names like Nimbus Deluxe, Cirrus Supreme, and the Cumulus 5000. Dionysus immediately takes a bite out of one. Cotton candy? No, Hephaestus says without looking up. Insulating polymer. Please spit that out. Too late. Over in the corner, Aphrodite is already testing how her perfume wafts through different cloud textures. This one disperses rose mist beautifully, but catches too much sandalwood. Athena's cloud responds with a gentle hum when she touches it. Tactical conductivity. Good. And Artemis? She's snoring gently on a silver-gray sample. Apparently, hers passes the nap test with flying colors. Zeus reviews the chaos with a deep sigh, the kind that echoes across mountaintops. Tomorrow, he announces, we begin formal judging. Tonight, everyone finalize your designs. Remember, pizzazz is a tiebreaker. The council dissolves, clouds drifting apart into personal cubicles. You follow yours, a moderately puffy little thing named Kelvin, as it floats gently toward a quieter section of Olympus. The light dims, stars twinkle overhead, and you can hear Hestia humming a lullaby into her hearth cloud. You let your eyes drift closed for a moment. The council isn't over. If anything, it's just getting started. But for now, you're suspended in a thick, ridiculous peace, somewhere between a divine nap and a myth no one remembers quite right.
By the time you wake up, if you ever truly fell asleep that is, the cloud judging pavilion has been transformed. It's not a pavilion so much as a bizarre floating amphitheater cobbled together from wisps of cumulus and stray celestial ribbons. Think Roman Colosseum meets upscale vaporwave cafe. A harp plays softly in the background. There is suspicious glitter on everything. Hermes zips past you with a clipboard, a whistle, and what appears to be a referee jersey 2 sizes too big. All right, everyone, he bellows. Time to showcase your divine vapor sculptures. You blink groggily. Is this a cloud contest or a 4th grade science fair? The gods are assembled in their own stations. Each one hovers on a plinth of finely woven storm threads, with their cloud design billowing above them like the world's fluffiest PowerPoint presentation. It's kind of impressive and completely ridiculous. First up, Demeter, Hermes calls. Demeter steps forward in a gown of woven barley and morning dew. Her cloud is a soft, earthy beige. It smells faintly of rain and fertile fields. This is harvest haze, she announces proudly. It waters crops below as it floats, stores pollen, emits calming pheromones for bees. There's a pause. Then Dionysus claps slowly. Cool, so it's like a sky salad? Functional and beautiful, Demeter insists, adjusting a vine on the edge of the cloud. Athena squints. Durability? Excellent, says Demeter. It can withstand 3 seasons and 1 minor tantrum from Zeus. Zeus pretends not to hear that. Hera leans in, fingering the edge of the cloud. Not enough drama. Not everything needs to be a soap opera, Artemis mutters.
Hermes scribbles furiously on his clipboard. Okay, next, Dionysus. Dionysus saunters forward. His cloud? A rolling, shimmering mass of deep purple vapor that smells suspiciously like fermented grapes and questionable decisions. This is the cloud of eternal revelry, he declares, arms wide. It plays faint lyre music, rains wine, and whispers compliments to anyone who passes beneath it. You raise an eyebrow. Did that cloud just flirt with you? Is it safe? Athena asks. Ish, Dionysus says. It once encouraged a goat to run for city council. Aphrodite claps. It's fabulous. Hades mutters, clouds shouldn't be allowed to have opinions. Mainstream fact time. Ancient Greeks really did believe clouds could be used by the gods as tools, veils, or weapons. In Homer's Iliad, Zeus frequently cloaks himself in clouds to assert divine control, while Iris, the rainbow goddess, zips between cloud layers delivering divine messages. Back to the presentation, where it's now Aphrodite's turn. She floats forward with all the pomp of a runway queen. Her cloud, a delicate, pink-hued vapor shaped like a reclining swan. Rose petals drift from it lazily. I call her Caress. She releases perfume in phases, glows during golden hour, and emits a low sigh when lonely. Everyone is silent for a moment. I love her, says Hestia quietly. Same, you murmur. Hera folds her arms. It's frivolous. It's emotionally available, Aphrodite corrects. Does it do anything useful? Athena asks. She helps people feel beautiful, Aphrodite says, shrugging. That's more than half of you can say.
You'd laugh if you weren't so relaxed. Everything about Aphrodite's cloud smells like a high-end pillow store and faint heartbreak. Hades is next. He steps forward in total silence. His cloud is black. Not storm black, void black. It absorbs light. It hums faintly like an organ note you feel in your teeth. This is obsidian drift, he says. It doesn't float, it looms. It blocks sunlight. It provides shade and regret. The temperature drops 5 degrees. Hermes clears his throat. Okay, and what's its nap compatibility? Perfect, Hades says. No dreams. You glance at the other gods. Half are nodding in appreciation. The other half look vaguely traumatized. Then it's Artemis's turn. She presents a shimmering, misty cloud that flickers in and out of view like a cautious deer. The lurker, she says simply. You can't see it unless it wants you to. Excellent for stealth naps, night hunts, and dramatic exits. Apollo claps a bit too hard. Nice! Can it play music? No. Right, okay. A quick, quirky tidbit before we go further. In some lesser-known regional myths, clouds were believed to carry messages from the gods in the form of animals, foxes, lions, or birds. Farmers would look to the shape of clouds for omens about planting, travel, or whether or not their goat was secretly plotting something. Back to the parade. Hephaestus is next. His cloud is a machine. A giant rotating gearwork puff with bronze fixtures and a steaming piston. It hovers ominously, emits puffs of precision fog, and hums like a well-oiled espresso machine. This is Stratus Prime, Hephaestus says. Self-repairing, weaponizable, includes forge interface and automated ember controls. Does it sparkle? Dionysus asks. It incinerates sparkle, Hephaestus answers. Apollo walks up with a flourish next. His cloud is golden, like actually made of light. It sings a constant soft melody that seems to match the tempo of your breathing. Helioscape, he announces. It rises with the sun, harmonizes with planetary rotations, and offers inspirational sunbeams for poets. Also known as overkill, Artemis says. He grins. Or perfection. Hera follows. Her cloud is a towering, multi-tiered column with peacock feathers woven into the vapor. Thunder crackles gently through it, and it occasionally judges people from above. This is majesty, she says. It provides weather-based disapproval, automatic crowd parting, and elevates my aura. What does it do for others, Hermes dares to ask. It reminds them to try harder, Hera replies. Finally, Athena steps forward. Her cloud is compact, pure white, shaped like a scroll unfurling. Lightning flickers subtly through its edges. This is strategos, she says. It predicts weather, war, and social dynamics. It can serve as a floating study space, and it contains all of Plato's writings as a backup. And can it hug you? Dionysus asks. No, but it can plan your retirement. You suddenly become aware of your own cloud, Kelvin, hovering gently behind you. It hasn't been officially entered in the competition, but it floats a little taller, maybe hoping someone notices. Hermes steps back, cheeks pink with excitement. All right, we now move into judging mode. Every god will evaluate every cloud except their own. 5 categories, 1 winner, 1 golden cumulus. And just like that, the divine judging begins. There are arguments. There is bribery. Dionysus offers Apollo 2 bottles of cloud wine to bump his score. Artemis threatens to withhold moonlight from Athena if she doesn't rank the lurker fairly. Hades just writes no on everyone's scorecard and floats away. And the mortals? Down on Earth, they glimpse strange cloud formations that day. Faces in the sky, dancing animals, a dark rectangle that seems disappointed in them. Historians still argue whether this part of myth was an allegory for the tension between reason and chaos, or just a result of ancient poets getting a little too much sun. By the end of the day, the sky is streaked with trial clouds, judgment trails, and the faint sparkle of competitive ego. Your head is full of scent, sound, vapor, and vaguely godlike bickering. One last thing before the scores are revealed tomorrow. You overhear Kelvin quietly mumble to itself. I could be a good cloud, it sighs, if someone gave me a chance. You pat its soft edge. By the time the gods reconvene, the sky has gone all hazy lavender, like the whole heavens just took a long hot bath and forgot to rinse. It's quiet up here, but not the awkward kind. More like that cozy hush after a festival, when everyone's too full or too tired to argue anymore. Even Hermes, the usual instigator, is chewing on a piece of ambrosia granola and pretending to review his clipboard like it's the final scroll of fate. You're still curled up on Kelvin. The cloud has learned to shape itself into a perfectly ergonomic beanbag, complete with a little puffed-up headrest. It lets out a pleased little sigh when you settle in. Honestly, it's the most supportive relationship you've ever had. All right, Hermes says, drifting up with a little more pomp than necessary. Score tallying has been mostly completed. There were some disputes. There are always disputes. He clears his throat. But before we reveal the results, we have a surprise contestant. You sit up. It appears, Hermes continues with a twinkle in his eye, that Kelvin has been nominated for the Best Rookie Cloud category. Every divine head swivels toward you, and Kelvin, who is now nervously fluffing its edges. Zeus raises an eyebrow. The mortals cloud? You give a sheepish little wave. Aphrodite leans forward. It's quite charming. It napped well, Hestia adds softly. Dionysus chuckles. I caught it humming to itself the other day, thought it was drunk fog. Hermes turns to Kelvin. Well then, care to present? Kelvin shivers. Hi, I'm Kelvin. I wasn't really trying to win, I just wanted to help my humans sleep. A pause. Even the stars seem to lean in. I can adjust my fluff for lumbar support. I remember dreams, so you don't have to. I produce light rain if your thoughts get too loud. And if you're scared of the dark, I glow a little. You feel your throat tighten, just slightly. Okay,
Who gave this cloud permission to be so vulnerable? Athena steps forward slowly. Does it do anything strategic? No, Kelvin admits, but I'm good at silence. And somehow, in this absurd celestial pageant, that hits harder than any thunderbolt. Mainstream fact detour. In ancient Greece, silence wasn't always weakness. The Pythagoreans believed that silence could be a form of cosmic understanding. Even Socrates, famously chatty, often used long pauses to let meaning settle. Some clouds, apparently, have taken that concept very seriously. The gods look to Hermes. He gives a shrug. Rookie category, remember? And so Kelvin floats beside the other entries as the judging begins in earnest. Each god now revisits each cloud, scoring them across 5 highly subjective categories: functionality, aesthetic appeal, emotional resonance, sleep compatibility, and divine vibe. First up, functionality. Demeter's harvest haze scores high for utility, low for glamour. Aphrodite says it smells like a vegan spa, which she means as an insult. Hephaestus gives it a solid nod of respect. Dionysus's eternal revelry gets disqualified temporarily after it accidentally seduces a flock of geese. Aphrodite's caress is downgraded slightly because it may have triggered an existential crisis in a mortal poet. Hephaestus's Stratus Prime passes the functionality test with flying sparks, but loses a few points for scaring Hera's peacocks. And Kelvin? It gets a modest but consistent score. It doesn't do much, but what it does very, very well.
Aesthetic appeal. Apollo's helioscape practically radiates approval. It actually makes a little chime when people look at it. Extra points for flair. Artemis's, the lurker, loses points from those who can't see it, gains them back from those who do. Hades' obsidian drift causes a brief debate about whether ominous counts as aesthetic. Hera's majesty receives a perfect score from herself, a polite nod from Athena, and a 110 from Dionysus for being a little much. Kelvin? Again, modest marks, but Hermes writes unexpectedly cozy in the notes section. Now we hit emotional resonance. Demeter's cloud reminds people of their grandmother's garden. Good start. Dionysus's creation gives someone a memory of their wildest summer, possibly invented. Aphrodite's? Yeah, half the judging panel tears up. It smells like your first kiss and your last good dream. Kelvin floats up, a little shaky. I make people feel safe, it whispers. You nod, just once, and suddenly that quiet little cloud scores the highest in the category. Even Hades gives it a 7. You steal a glance at the god of the underworld. Really? He shrugs. We all need a break from storms. Time for sleep compatibility. Hephaestus's cloud, for all its wonders, is too loud. It emits steam sighs at midnight. Artemis's vanishes when you roll over. Not ideal. Apollo's is too bright. Hera's too judgmental. Demeter's reigns at inopportune times. Dionysus whispers inappropriate things. But Kelvin? Kelvin has been beside you this whole time, shifting, supporting, sinking to your breath, your heartbeat, your mood. It's the only cloud that actually lets you rest. Top marks. Finally, divine vibe. This is the most nebulous, pun intended, category. It includes how cool a cloud feels, how godly it makes someone look while riding it, and whether it would impress a pantheon on a first date. Apollo wins this one easily. He even does a slow spin. Kelvin doesn't sparkle, doesn't hum, doesn't rotate dramatically. But when asked what divine vibe it brings, I help mortals feel a little closer to the sky. A moment of silence. Then Hestia claps. Not a golf clap. A proud aunt who brought snacks to the school play kind of clap. And just like that, the scores are in. Hermes floats up, holding the scroll.
All right, gods and minor clouds, we have our results. There's a hush. Even the clouds hold their vapor. Best overall design? Helioscape by Apollo. Apollo does a double peace sign. Best functionality? Stratus Prime by Hephaestus. He snorts and mutters something about gears. Best emotional resonance? Caress by Aphrodite. She blows a kiss at the moon. Best sleep compatibility? Kelvin. You feel your cloud actually blush. It puffs up in delight. And finally, best rookie cloud? Kelvin. Unanimous. Everyone applauds. Even Hades claps once. Kelvin flutters like a soft feather in a breeze of applause. Hermes turns to you. Would you like to say a few words on behalf of your cloud? You stand, a little wobbly, still wrapped in vapor comfort. Kelvin didn't come here to win, just to help me rest. And honestly, that's all I ever really needed. There's a rustle of approval. Even Hera smiles, just slightly. Mainstream myth sidebar. While there's no actual cloud competition in Greek myth, tragic, the gods were constantly ranking, judging, and one-upping each other. From beauty contests like the Judgment of Paris to endless squabbles over who controls what domain, divine ego was a full-time job. But tonight, a small cloud with a big heart got noticed. And as the stars begin to stretch across the heavens, one by one, like sleepy eyes blinking open, Kelvin floats beside you, humming its soft little song. You don't need thunder, drama, or radiance. Just this, just now. And that, somehow, is enough.
With the awards handed out and the sky now scattered with soft blinking stars, the gods begin to drift away, murmuring and yawning, as if being divine has a bedtime too. Some vanish into streaks of golden light. Others just float off sideways like tired helium balloons with impressive capes. Zeus, of course, is last to leave, after dramatically declaring that he lets others win sometimes, for morale. You stay seated on Kelvin, whose fluff is now slightly rumpled from all the excitement, like a cozy blanket after a perfect nap. The little cloud wiggles in triumph, then deflates modestly. "I didn't expect to win," it mumbles. You pat its surface. Yeah, well, nobody expects the cloud to have feelings. Up ahead, Hermes lingers behind, tapping on his scroll. He finally glides over, not looking up. So, the gods have made an unofficial request. You tilt your head. They'd like Kelvin to design a prototype cloud for general mortal use, something that helps people sleep better, like what you two have going here. Kelvin trembles. Me? Build a cloud? For everyone? Hermes nods. Just a sample, nothing crazy. Zeus wants to call it Kelvin MK2, but we're workshopping that. You glance at your little fluff friend. It's spinning in place, slowly, like it just overloaded its dream buffer. And then something shifts. The stars twinkle a bit brighter. The air takes on that hush again, that fuzzy stillness you feel right before falling asleep or right after finishing a really good book. The kind where nothing happens, but you don't want it to end. You sigh, letting your shoulders relax. All right, let's help you build the perfect sleep cloud. Here's the thing. Designing a cloud is wildly impractical. There's no manual, no measurements, and definitely no IKEA instructions. You can't tighten a bolt if the bolt is missed and the wrench is belief. But you and Kelvin try anyway. First challenge, texture. Most people think clouds are fluffy. They are not. Real clouds are wet and cold and will turn your picnic into a Greek tragedy. But divine clouds? Totally customizable. So you and Kelvin experiment. One day it tries cotton candy softness, too sticky. Another day, velvet, weirdly formal. I feel like a couch in a rich aunt's house, Kelvin grumbles. Memory foam cloud? Promising. But once it memorizes your shape, it starts offering unsolicited advice.
Maybe try stretching in the morning. Eventually, Kelvin finds something just right, like a weighted blanket of vapor and kindness. Not too hot, not too cold. Just there, like a friend who doesn't ask questions and always brings snacks. Sensory detail alert? Imagine resting your head against that texture. Your spine instantly sighs, your toes uncurl, even your eyelashes feel supported. It's like floating in a hug. Next up, ambient sounds. Because sleep clouds shouldn't be silent. Silence, in the wrong context, is where anxiety throws its wild parties. So you test soundtracks. Ocean waves? Too dramatic. Whale song? Pretty, but after 10 minutes, it feels like you're being guilt-tripped by Poseidon. Harp music? No. Rain? Getting closer. Eventually, Kelvin settles on a loop of soft wind rustling through cypress trees, with the occasional owl hoot and one sleepy cicada who's clearly trying its best. You drift off mid-test, twice, which is a very good sign. While all this is happening, the gods begin dropping in, occasionally, casually, pretending they're just checking the weather. Athena brings blueprints. Of course she does. They're etched into obsidian slabs because paper is for amateurs. Apollo offers a golden tuning fork to calibrate the soundscape. He insists on testing it himself by humming into the wind. Dionysus swings by uninvited and adds lavender mist. It improves the vibe by 73%. Even Artemis appears one night, crouching silently next to you. She says nothing, just leaves behind a single moonbeam that softens the corners of dreams. Mainstream myth insert. In ancient stories, the gods often meddled in mortal inventions. Fire? Thank Prometheus. The lyre? Hermes. Wine? Dionysus. Even weaving, cooking, and makeup had divine consultants. So really, a sleep cloud? Par for the pantheon.
But here's the problem. Every god wants a different feature. Aphrodite demands a setting for romantic nostalgia. I want people to remember almost falling in love. Hephaestus wants adjustable temperature zones. Left leg cold, right leg warm. You know, real human stuff. Hades wants it to not wake people during nightmares. Let them finish it. Closure is important. You try to please them all, but it becomes too much. One night, Kelvin sags. Literally, it flattens into a sad little mattress puddle. "I can't do this," it whispers. "I just wanted to help you sleep. Now I'm a committee project." You lie back, staring at a crack in the sky where 2 stars forgot to twinkle. "Let's forget them for a moment," you say. "Let's go back to the beginning, you and me." Kelvin pulses gently. "Okay." So you erase the blueprints, quietly tuck Apollo's tuning fork under the bed, sweep away Dionysus's mood mist, tell Hera you appreciate her involvement, but no, a velvet lining with gold trim might be a little loud. And then you and Kelvin just sit. You ask it, "What would you put in a dream?" Kelvin thinks, then answers, "I'd let people float, not fly. Floating's quieter. I'd give them clouds that listen, breezes that remember lullabies, and stars that don't just shine, but blink at the exact moment you need to feel seen." You blink. That's oddly poetic. "I've been hanging around Aphrodite too much," Kelvin mutters. Over the next few nights, the prototype becomes something else. It isn't flashy or grand. It doesn't vibrate or sparkle or emit calming advice in 12 languages. It just feels safe. You test it by inviting a few tired mortals, chosen randomly. A shepherd, a student, a grandmother with too many lists in her head. All of them fall asleep within minutes. Some smile, one hums. And then the gods come back. They don't say much. Even Zeus just stands there, scratching his beard. Finally, Athena says, "It's quiet, but complete." And that's when Hermes seals it. Approved for limited celestial release. He stamps a scroll with a thundercloud-shaped insignia because bureaucracy survives even in Olympus. A pause. You glance at Kelvin. You okay? I think so, it whispers. I didn't expect to become a sleep architect. I just wanted to be the kind of cloud someone could trust. Quirky tidbit sidebar. There's a real meteorological phenomenon called a Kelvin-Helmholtz cloud, which looks like waves rippling across the sky. Totally unrelated, but your cloud decides its fate. It adds a faint wave-like ripple on its lower belly just for flair. That night, after all the gods vanish and even Hermes stops checking his notifications, you and Kelvin float into your own little pocket of sky. No tests, no upgrades, no divine input. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that has layers. The kind that welcomes dreams before they knock. You stretch out. Kelvin fluffs slightly under your back. You sigh. The stars dim just a bit to match your eyelids. Somewhere below, mortals begin to dream. Under the first true sleep cloud designed not by gods, but by a little puff of vapor that simply wanted to help someone rest. And really, that might be the most divine act of all. You're lying on your back, suspended in the sky's hush, your fingers tracing slow, invisible spirals in the air. Kelvin drifts beside you, humming what might be a lullaby or might just be the soft burble clouds make when they're content. You can't tell. Doesn't matter. Beneath you, the world is asleep, or close to it. But above? Above, the gods are restless again. You hear it first in the static shimmer of the clouds, whispers, then flapping wings, then someone, not naming names but probably Hermes, knocking over a celestial harp. I thought they signed off on the design, you murmur. Kelvin wilts slightly. They did, but now they want branding. You blank? Branding for a sleep cloud? Yes, Hermes calls from behind a cumulus curtain. We're thinking Z-scape with a lightning bolt logo. Zeus loves it. You pinch the bridge of your nose. Here we go again. As the gods start forming a committee, complete with scrolls, celestial consultants, and what might be a PowerPoint projected on the moon, you and Kelvin slide away, silently. It takes them several hours to notice, and by then, you're far across the sky. You pass under the Southern Cross, the stars warmer here somehow. Maybe they heard what happened last time and decided to offer you a break. Kelvin nudges you. Where are we going? Anywhere they're not, you say. So you drift, past the edges of known myth, beyond where the sea meets the stars. And that's when you see it. A cluster of clouds, long abandoned. They float in odd shapes, some like animals, some like towers, one like a teacup balanced precariously on a narwhal. Leftover prototypes? Discarded daydreams? You land in the middle of them. The air is quiet, like an attic with a view. One cloud coughs politely. Are you here to recycle us? You stare. What? A larger cloud, shaped suspiciously like an armchair, chimes in. We were early drafts, unstable weather forms. The gods used us to test ideas. Kelvin floats forward. Why were you abandoned? They said we were too weird, says a cloud shaped like an accordion. Kelvin hums in sympathy. Yeah, I know how that feels. You spend the next little while meeting these forgotten clouds. They're delightful, in a slightly chaotic, definitely underloved sort of way. One offers you a cup of rain tea. Another teaches you a two-note cloud song. Then a particularly square-shaped one, called Nimbus Prime, asks, "Are you the one who made the sleep cloud?" You nod. The clouds ripple. You're our last chance. Apparently, these abandoned weatherlings have been dreaming of purpose. Not fame, not thunder, just something. Something small, helpful. One of them, shaped like a sleeping fox, says, "Can we help make dreams too?" You look at Kelvin. Kelvin shrugs, well, ripples. Let's try. And just like that, you have a crew. Mainstream fact drop.
In Greek mythology, it wasn't unusual for divine creations to be imperfect or even scrapped. Hephaestus made automatons. Athena invented chariots, and once a ship that got completely ignored. The gods weren't always consistent. Their cast-offs often took on lives of their own, like Talos, the bronze guardian of Crete, or Pandora, who was more prototype than person. So really, working with discarded clouds? Not that weird historically speaking.
You spend the next few days, or nights, it's hard to tell up here, retraining the weird clouds, teaching them how to hum lullabies, how to support without smothering, how to glow just a bit so that dreamers don't feel alone in the dark. Some are naturals, others require feedback. Okay, you tell one that smells faintly like pickles and static electricity. Let's maybe tone down the electric dreams, yeah? Nimbus Prime takes over project management. You get daily mist reports. Kelvin? He starts teaching them emotional regulation. If someone's anxious, give them extra softness. If they're sad, play a warm memory. If they're angry, float low and keep quiet. It's oddly moving, like watching a startup of Skyfluff find its soul. Fringe tidbit time. Some modern dream researchers have proposed that cloud-like environments, soft textures, gentle airflow, warm humidity, can help the body mimic the early stages of REM sleep. No one's built a real dream cloud yet, but hey, you're doing it right now with former cloud rejects, way ahead of science. Soon, word spreads. Mortals, those sensitive to sky shifts, start reporting unusual dreams. Ones with talking animals and staircases made of moonlight. Dreams where the air is kind and the clouds ask, "How was your day?" before fading into song. One kid in Athens writes about a dream where he played hopscotch across clouds that changed shape based on his laugh. Another, in Tokyo, dreams of a cloud that cradled his sadness like a cup catching tears. You don't brag, but your clouds beam, literally. That's when the gods notice. And this time, they aren't annoyed. They're curious. Aphrodite sends a dandelion-scented breeze as congratulations. Apollo hums your cloud lullaby during one of his sunrises. Even Eris, grumpy, sword-happy Eris, admits, "I dreamt last night. No battle, just quiet." Hermes drops in again. This time, he's holding a golden envelope. He hands it to Kelvin. Kelvin reads it out loud. By unanimous divine agreement, you are hereby recognized as the patron cloud of restful sleep and nighttime peacefulness. Also, congrats on not imploding. Hermes grins. You've made a new category. We didn't even have a god or cloud for sleep quality. Now we do. Kelvin turns to you. Do you think that means I'm immortal now? You shrug. Maybe just long-lasting, like good sheets. Scholarly debate cue. Some modern mythologists argue whether lesser-known divine roles, like minor spirits of rest, breeze, or drowsiness, were ever formally worshipped, or if they simply evolved from collective dreams and ambient storytelling. Maybe the idea of a sleep cloud is just one of those, half real, half wish, but real enough to matter. You lean back again, letting the clouds you've trained gather around you like dream bodyguards, each one humming a slightly different note. Together, harmony. And in that moment, as the world twingles below and the sky shuffles its stars into sleeping positions, you realize something. You've made a dream not just for yourself, but for everyone who's ever needed a quiet place to let go. You take a deep breath. Kelvin floats beside you. The clouds tuck in tighter. You don't need branding. You don't need gold-trimmed scrolls or divine logos. You have what the gods forgot to want: comfort without condition, rest without reward. And in the great, soft silence that follows, you fall asleep. You wake up slowly, like a sunbeam stretching across the floor of a quiet room. No rush, no alarm, just the hush of early sky and the slow churn of a world that seems, for once, to be taking its time. Your cloud doesn't even wiggle. It lets you lie there a little longer, like it knows what you've been carrying. Kelvin is floating upside down next to you, because of course he is. You were drooling in your sleep, he says. I was dreaming about cinnamon toast, you reply. He considers. Acceptable. The new cloud crew hovers nearby, dreamy little oddballs, each with a faint personality. One is shaped like a sleeping cat, another like a grand piano with a face. The one that used to smell like static electricity now smells faintly of warm vanilla. Progress. They form a loose protective arc as you drift along. You're not steering anymore. The sky moves you like a conveyor belt made of softness and intuition. It's not long before you feel it. The hum, the faintest vibration in the air, like something is waiting. You squint. Up ahead, a formation in the clouds. Towering, symmetrical, geometric, like someone built a cathedral out of whipped cream and moonlight. Kelvin whistles. What is that? That, you say, is organized weather. Because apparently, not all clouds are into soft vibes and naptime acoustics. Some are into bureaucracy. You drift into the edge of what appears to be a sky city. Not Olympus, not quite. This place is cooler in tone, pearlescent grays and dignified silvers. The clouds wear uniforms. They stack themselves into cubic blocks and hexagonal corridors, and each one buzzes with a soft, barely audible hum, like they're computing. Kelvin frowns. We're in Strait. Gesundheit. No, he says. That's what this is. Strait is the Weather Guild's cloud district, the analytics hub. They run dream metrics. You blink? Dream metrics? Oh yeah. Sleep intensity ratings, cloud density ratios, dream plotline clarity, it's all tracked here. Every cloud deployed has to file a 23.7b dream satisfaction form. You stare. You're kidding. Kelvin drifts past a sign that says, "Welcome to Strait. Your dream, our data." Nope. A long, thin cloud shaped like a spreadsheet glides over. Name and function, please. Kelvin puffs up. Cloud KVN7, Auxiliary Dreamform Assistant. And this is unauthorized operator, the spreadsheet cloud finishes, scanning you. Unlicensed, unlogged, unlawful. You smile politely. I make people sleep better. The cloud blanks. So do pharmaceutical ads, and they have paperwork. You are immediately ushered into a conference hall. It's massive, columned cumulus support beams and a ceiling that flickers with dream analytics. One panel reads, average REM duration, 74.2 minutes. Another flashes, lucid dream frequency, up 2% in coastal regions. Sitting at the end of a misty table, 3 elite cirrus clouds with bow ties and monocles. One has an actual clipboard. Another is shaped like a filing cabinet. The third looks suspiciously like a pie chart. We're the Dream Integrity Committee, says Filing Cabinet Cloud. Mainstream fact time. In ancient Greek culture, dreams were considered important messages, sometimes divine, sometimes deceitful. The god Morpheus, a son of Hypnos, was believed to shape dreams and relay them to mortals. Temples of Asclepius even practiced incubation, where dreamers slept in sacred spaces hoping for healing visions. But nobody tracked dream metrics. You're in uncharted cloud territory now. The pie chart cloud spins slightly. Your unauthorized cloud units have been reported in multiple dream zones. No tags, no documentation. Some of them are oddly shaped. They're gentle, you say. They help people sleep. That's the point.
The monocle clouds exchange puffs of judgment. You've disrupted the dream traffic, says Filing Cabinet. Mixed narrative streams, oversaturated the alpha wave zones. Kelvin leans in. You guys are seriously upset that someone made sleep too restful? Yes, they say, in perfect unison. Cue fringe tidbit. Some fringe psychologists once suggested that excessively perfect sleep might actually reduce dream variety and thus creativity. It's a controversial take, but somewhere out there is a study involving jazz musicians and unusually boring dreams. It did not end well. You sigh. So what happens now? Pie chart cloud flickers. Evaluation. You must prove your clouds produce sustainable, beneficial dream content without exceeding comfort thresholds. And if I don't? You'll be archived, says filing cabinet cloud, gently. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds cold. So they bring in the dream simulator, a sleek, silvery platform shaped like a memory foam mattress designed by an architect who moonlights as a DJ. You'll create a dream scenario live, says Spreadsheet Cloud. We'll monitor structure, tone, emotional warmth, and imaginative novelty. You crack your neck. Kelvin stretches. Your clouds hover nervously nearby. Then the simulation begins. You call forth the softest breeze you can manage, laced with a memory of childhood laughter and lavender tea. The clouds swirl into a slow rhythm, forming an open forest of silver trees that hum lullabies through their leaves. A cobblestone path unfurls itself. Small glowing frogs sing in time with the breeze. A quiet lake mirrors the sky. And in the middle of it all, a dreamer, young, tired, hopeful, rests against a tree that slowly breathes with them, in and out, in and out. No drama, no epic battles, just peace. The Dream Integrity Committee watches in utter silence. Even the pie chart pauses its rotation. Then, a beep. A holographic readout appears. Sleep depth, 98%. Narrative fluidity, high. Emotional anchoring, calming. Dream fade-out score, A+. The monocles shiver. Filing cabinet closes its drawer. You've redefined the dreamscape, one says quietly. No chaos, no crisis, just rest. Kelvin gives you a proud nudge. The committee huddles in a cloud of whispering mist. You wait, holding your breath. Finally, they return. By unanimous vote, says Spreadsheet Cloud, you are hereby granted a provisional Dream Architect designation. Provisional, you ask? We'll still be watching. Of course they will. But for now, you've made it. Your clouds get little badges, tiny glimmers of silver mist shaped like feathers. Nimbus Prime almost cries. Scholarly debate insert. Some historians argue whether the Greeks truly believed dreams were messages from the gods or simply internal phenomena interpreted through a spiritual lens. The line between divine revelation and subconscious storytelling was always blurry, just like clouds, really. You leave Cirrus quietly. No parades, no music, just a slow exit beneath an aurora of calm. Your cloud crew flutters behind you, each carrying a new confidence. Kelvin somersaults mid-air. Where to now? He asks. You glance down. A little town is flickering with stress dreams. You smile. Let's go soothe some monsters. And together, you dive softly into the night.
Down you drift, your cloud carrying you with the grace of a sigh. The night below is velvet dark, stitched with golden window lights and street lamps that flicker like tiny stars, confused about where they belong. You and your squad descend like the softest rain that never quite lands. Clouds coil around rooftops, whispering promises of rest into attic windows and cracked open bedroom vents. Kelvin hums the chorus of a lullaby made entirely of vowels. Beneath you, a town that's quietly losing sleep. Some places pulse with a quiet anxiety, and this one practically hums with it. Bad dreams leak from chimneys, trailing like gray ribbons in the air. You can smell the static, burnt toast and overdue emails and middle school embarrassment layered over existential dread. "Looks like a classic case of stress storm," Kelvin mutters. "Messy brain weather." You scan the scene. Every few houses have little weather vanes twitching wildly, not from wind, from emotional gusts. Panic, restlessness, the occasional bout of 3 a.m. existential Sudoku. Cloud Unit Nimbus 14 floats beside you, wearing its brand new feather badge like it's been knighted. "Shall we deploy?" You nod, gently, no sudden hugs. The clouds spread out with sleepy elegance, positioning themselves over rooftops and apartment buildings. Their approach is slow, deliberate, like wrapping a city in a warm, weighted blanket, one corner at a time. You, of course, go where the turbulence is thickest. And there it is, a small blue house near the edge of town where dream static crackles loudest. The roof trembles faintly, like the house is trying not to remember something. You ease your cloud down over it and listen. Inside, a teenager tossing under a mountain of blankets, earbuds still in, phone clutched like a life raft. The dream pulses into view. You close your eyes and enter. Suddenly, you're in a vast marble courtroom, the kind that smells like dust and power. The teenager stands accused in front of 3 dream judges made entirely of their own worst thoughts. One's a math test that won't end, one's their childhood dentist, and the third is an Instagram feed that updates live with their regrets. You step forward. Objection. This dream violates the Restfulness Act of 3 minutes ago. The judges glare. The math test starts multiplying aggressively. You flick your wrist, and a soft rain falls from nowhere. Every drop erases a little fear. The Instagram feed fuzzes out into gentle noise. The dentist loses his tiny hammer and decides to take up pottery. And the courtroom transforms. Marble crumbles into picnic blankets. The air sweetens like birthday cake, and the teen starts to laugh in their sleep. You withdraw slowly. In the real world, the cloud above the house purrs like a kitten made of whipped cream. Mainstream fact break. The ancient Greeks believed in gods of dreams and sleep, but they also had personifications for stress and fear. Phobos and Deimos, sons of Ares, embodied panic and terror. Nightmares were thought to be sent by daemons, spirits not necessarily evil, but certainly not relaxing. The idea that stress dreams might come from divine messengers? That would definitely explain why your group just got a surprise visit. Because as you rise into the sky again, someone is waiting. A single cloud, black as ink, sharp as thunder, flanked by wisps that move like wolves. Kelvin says, "That's not one of ours." Nope, that's a nightmare courier. It floats closer, trailing slivers of jagged memory and old arguments. Its voice is like someone whispering your name from the other side of a locked door. "You're disrupting the fear cycle," it says. "Unbalanced dream loads, emotional compression ratios are dropping." You squint. "People are sleeping better." "Exactly," it replies. "You're softening them. They need pressure to grow." Fringe tidbit alert. There's an obscure theory that dreams evolved as a kind of mental training simulation, a way to rehearse threats in a safe environment. That argument has led to some hilariously serious research involving fake spiders, flight simulators, and arguing with fictional in-laws. Kelvin whispers, "Do we run?" "No," you say, "we redirect." So you send your clouds, slow, sleepy, undramatic, to circle the nightmare courier. They don't attack, they don't shout. They soothe. Which, it turns out, is way more annoying. The nightmare courier hisses, "You can't erase all fear. It serves a purpose." You nod. "Sure, but it doesn't need to run the entire playlist. The courier glares, but the clouds are relentless. One sings a lullaby in the form of warm colors, another hums the sensation of being held as a child. The courier flickers, fracturing into fragmented shadows. And then, poof, gone, back to the shadowy cloud district of unresolved trauma. You sigh. That'll come back later. Everything does, Kelvin shrugs. With the nightmare dispersed, your cloud crew regroups. Nimbus 14 high-fives Cumulus 7 in a puff of soft air. Overhead, the stars start to relax. And then, a signal. A giant cloud beacon in the shape of a pillow lights up far to the east. Kelvin peers through binoculars shaped like marshmallows. Uh-oh, that's the Council's final test zone. The what? He looks solemn. Final test before full dream architect status. You've soothed sleepy towns, you've impressed the analytics, but there's one thing left. You brace. He leans in, whispering, "You have to build a cloud for the gods." You blink. Like the actual Greek gods? Yup, old school immortals. They want a nap cloud. Of course they do. Because, apparently, somewhere in the bureaucracy of divine rest, there is a shortage of suitable nap environments for eternal beings. Historians still argue whether the gods of Olympus were truly worshipped as living entities or more as metaphors for human behavior and nature. But one thing seems consistent. They were needy. Lightning bolts, golden apples, flying sandals, and now customized dream furniture. You look toward the beacon. Let's go impress some deities. And your cloud lifts again, upward toward the divine skyline, toward the gods, toward whatever ridiculous dream assignment they have planned for you next. Because let's face it, no one ever said bedtime was boring.
The sky changes as you climb. Not just in color, though it does shift from deep indigo to a kind of shimmering peach you're pretty sure isn't on any official color wheel, but in feel. The air thickens with ancientness. You can smell legacy, like marble warmed by sun, and myths that never stopped echoing. Even Kelvin stops humming. You pass a floating orchard where golden apples drift lazily in midair, guarded by clouds shaped like suspicious goats. There's a spiraling fountain of ambrosia mist that gives your fingertips a slight buzz as you float past. One cloud whispers the secret location of Atlantis, then immediately forgets it again. And finally, you see it. Olympus. No, not the mountain. That's just the Earth edition. This Olympus is a cloud-based executive retreat floating high above the mortal zone. It's massive, regal, shimmering. Think ancient temple crossed with luxury spa crossed with a very ambitious nap pod. Cloud-carved columns coil upward, holding up sky domes that shift color based on divine mood. There's music in the air, but it sounds like a harp fell in love with a lava lamp. You are gently nudged toward the grand entryway by a pair of escort clouds shaped like eagles in yoga poses. Kelvin tries to high-five one. It politely ignores him. Inside, the atmosphere is tense. Gods, goddesses, minor immortals, and a few confused river nymphs lounge around, each on their own underwhelming cloud pillow. Most look deeply unimpressed. Zeus himself stands near the center, his beard braided and his robe doing that magical billowing thing, even though there's no wind. "Ah," he says, eyeing you like you're a food truck parked in a sacred garden. "The mortal?" You blink. "Technically, I'm a dream operator." "Same thing," he mutters. "Let's see what you've got." Turns out, the gods are holding a nap-off. Yes, really. A competition. Because apparently, they can't agree on what the ideal god-tier nap cloud should be. Of course they can't. Each major god has submitted their specs. You are expected to make one cloud to rule them all. No pressure. Zeus insists on thunder-layered base coils. just a touch of static to keep the ego charged. Hera demands high thread count mist with built-in marital boundary settings. Poseidon wants a waterbed, of course. Aphrodite prefers scented vapors and complimentary poetry. Hades doesn't sleep, but he wants the cloud to simulate the cold comfort of forgotten dreams. And Dionysus? He wants it to whisper bad decisions from last weekend loudly. Mainstream fact break. In ancient Greek mythology, the gods of Olympus were notorious for being, well, petty. Their squabbles over power, love, and pride led to most of the dramatic myths we still retell today. Hospitality, comfort, and beauty were prized, but consensus? Not so much. You look at Kelvin. I need all the clouds. All of them? All of them. Your crew assembles. Nimbus 14, Cumulus 7, that one shaped like a confused llama. Even the cloud that smells like petrichor and homework shows up. Together, you build a throne of slumber. It begins with a base of velvety stratocumulus, shaped to gently rise and fall like a heartbeat. You layer in the Dionysian murmurs, just the faintest hints of party regrets, softened by lullaby rhythms. The waterbed element from Poseidon is woven in with lavender tides that ebb gently through the base. Hera's thread count settings shimmer through the mist, letting each divine sleeper adjust their comfort boundaries on a metaphysical scale of 1 to passive-aggressive. You embed a lightning filament, not enough to zap, just enough to tingle. Zeus smiles, and the sky clears a little. Aphrodite's commands are trickier, but you solve it with cloud fragrances that shift to match personal nostalgia, like the scent of a lover's hair before the breakup. And Hades? You place a single memory fragment beneath the cushion, a forgotten lullaby, a tune that fades even as you hear it, cold and lovely. The gods take turns. One by one, they test it. And, shockingly, they nap. You watch the great and powerful deities of ancient Greece softly snoring. Even Hermes, who hasn't napped since the Trojan War, curls up in a fetal pose and mutters something about sandals. Zeus, after waking with a yawn that shakes the sky, looks at you with grudging respect. That was not bad. I aim for barely tolerable, you reply. He smiles. A lightning bolt tattoos itself briefly across the sky, then disappears. The gods huddle briefly. Then Athena, who's been silently reading dreamwaves this entire time, speaks. Your cloud has achieved something rare. It comforted everyone, even me. You blink. You nap? She gives you a sly look, only when nobody's watching. Kelvin coughs. So, does this mean what I think it means? Zeus steps forward. He holds out a glowing scroll. By decree of the Council of Olympus, you are hereby elevated to the rank of, you brace for something majestic, licensed Level 1 Dream Architect. You blank. Level 1? Athena shrugs. It's a very tall ladder. Still, you take the scroll. It glows with warmth and the faint hum of eternal paperwork. Your clouds cheer, softly of course. But even in your joy, you notice something. A ripple, a faint disturbance in the eastern sky. Kelvin sees it too. That's weird. It's not another dream signal. It's older, more real. You frown. Then a whisper curls through the clouds like cold breath on the back of your neck. Not all gods were invited to Olympus. Fringe tidbit moment. The Greek pantheon wasn't a closed club. Older deities, primordial gods like Nyx, Night, Chaos, and Erebus were often left out of mainstream mythology, but continued to lurk at the edges, powerful and unpredictable. Some even predated the Titans. Zeus notices the whisper too. He suddenly looks uncomfortable. Time for you to go, he says. But We don't handle that kind of dream. And just like that, the clouds around you start folding in. Olympus fades behind you, and you're falling. Not crashing, just descending. Towards something deeper, older, darker. You hold the scroll tight, because it's time to find out what happens when the forgotten gods start dreaming.
You fall like a feather dropped from a story that's never been told. Not a plummet, more of a slow motion unraveling. Your cloud turning inside out around you, like it's remembering how it used to float before Olympus had rules. Below, the sky dims into ink. Not night, something older than night. The kind of dark that existed before bedtime routines, before ceiling projectors, before lullabies ever rhymed. Even Kelvin's usual chirp is hushed. Where are we going? I think beneath dreams. You land softly, but the ground has no texture. It's made of absence. No sound, no scent, no breeze. Just a vast, endless hush. A shape begins to form in the distance, something between a temple and a forgotten thought. Cracked marble columns, curling shadows, and staircases that descend instead of rise. Kelvin whispers, "This is a bad idea." You nod. "Let's do it anyway." The air around you pulses like a heartbeat muffled by heavy wool. Your cloud dims its glow to a sleepy gray, staying close behind. As you approach the structure, names begin to shimmer faintly on the walls. Not written, just implied. Nyx, Erebus, Hypnos, Moros. The primordial ones. The ones that didn't get invited to the divine nap party in the sky. Inside, a vast hall stretches in every direction. It smells like candle smoke and ancient thunder. At its center lies an altar, not for worship, but for memory. And on it, a sleeping figure. Not a god, not a mortal, something older. You step closer. The figure exhales, and the room shifts. Suddenly, you're elsewhere, not physically, but inside the dream of this forgotten being. A swirl of everything and nothing. Mountains form, then crumble. Oceans freeze mid-wave. You watch a city rise and fast forward, only to dissolve into mist. Mainstream fact moment. In some of the earliest Greek cosmogonies, like those of Hesiod, Nyx, night, was one of the first beings to emerge from chaos, even older than Zeus or the Titans. She gave birth to abstract forces like Hypnos, sleep, Thanatos, and Moros without a partner. Nyx wasn't evil, just inevitable. The dreamscape around you rearranges again, and you realize this is her, Nyx. The goddess of night is dreaming, and it's not going well. Fragments of ancient fears slither across the air. Early human terrors, like being hunted in the dark or not knowing where the stars went. You dodge a shadow that tries to remember you into existence. Kelvin winces. She's dreaming of when she mattered. That's the crux of it. Nyx isn't causing nightmares. She's trapped in one. A dream of being forgotten, dismissed, turned into a footnote. You glance at your tools. You've soothed towns, redirected teenage anxieties, built nap furniture for egomaniacs with thunderbolts. But this?
This is existential grief wrapped in velvet shadow. Fringe tidbit. There's a barely mentioned myth that Zeus once feared Nyx so much he refused to face her directly, even when angry. She didn't wield power through force, but through inevitability. Night always falls. Darkness always returns. You approach the center of the dream. It fights you. Not with monsters or jump scares, but with silence, with the aching pressure of not being seen. Your thoughts start to fuzz.
Your name forgets how to spell itself. Kelvin holds your hand. Remember that golden apple orchard and Dionysus's dream where he was dating a giant talking grape? You nod. Yeah. Hold on to that. It's real. You reach out and touch the dream. Not to fix it, but to listen. The silence trembles. And then you speak. Softly, gently, like whispering to a scared child or a wild animal that's been alone too long. You're still here. We remember, even if the stories don't say your name out loud. Nyx shifts in her dream. The mountains pause, the waves hold their breath. I've walked through stress storms. I've built clouds for gods who think snoring is undignified. I've sung to cities until they forgot their pain. The dreamscape stills. You keep going. But this matters more. You don't need to be worshipped. You just need to be witnessed. A pulse of darkness rolls out. Not threatening, more like an exhale. And slowly, the dream begins to soften. The shadows lighten, not into sunshine, but into velvety dusk. Stars appear, not bright, but warm, familiar. Nyx stirs. You feel her presence for real now, not as a being of terror, but of quiet. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. She simply sees you. And that's enough. The hall around you fades. The altar dissolves. The names on the walls glow one last time, then melt into stars. You're rising again, this time not on a cloud, but on a breeze made of old stories. Back into dream space proper. Back toward the surface. Kelvin exhales. Well, that wasn't terrifying at all. You laugh softly. She just needed a better pillow. Above, the stars shimmer slightly closer. The clouds feel warmer. And far in the distance, another dream signal pings. Just one. Gentle, familiar. It's the teen from the stress storm town. You smile. Because even gods need comfort. But so do kids with earbuds and overdue homework. And tonight, you've got enough clouds for everyone. The stars gently shuffle overhead like someone rearranging marbles on a velvet sheet. You glide along the cloud stream, now slower, warmer, and somehow thicker, as if the air has remembered it's supposed to be sleepy. You've just soothed a primordial goddess, calmed a divine family of nap-starved drama queens, and helped a forgotten kid in a flickering suburb make peace with the terrifying tyranny of unfinished essays. But dream space? It's far from done with you. A familiar ping taps your ears. Another signal. This one's messy, not frantic, but tangled, like it got caught in too many thoughts at once and forgot what shape it was supposed to be. The color's off, too. Dreams usually flicker in pastels, but this one pulses in indigo and crayon green. Kelvin peeks at the waveform. This is... oh boy. What? He shows you. A looping wave. No rhythm. Just chaos. This, he says, is an art student. Oh dear. You lean in. The dream is unfolding inside a tall, crooked house made of half-finished ideas and tangled earbuds. There are walls made of cardboard portfolios, a roof that rains existential dread, and floors that keep changing colors based on student debt. You step inside. The dreamer is pacing, well, floating in an abstract way that counts as pacing in dream physics. They're covered in paint stains, muttering things like, "It's derivative," and "Do clouds even have form?" Welcome to the dream of Eris, a 22-year-old art student caught between love for ancient Greek mythology and a semester-long battle with their final project. They've chosen to depict the clouds of the gods, but they've hit a block. Nothing feels right. The myths, too grandiose. The gods,
too self-important. The clouds, not cloudy enough. You hover in the corner and watch. They open sketchbooks, tear pages, redraw Zeus's beard 9 times, and then scribble out the whole scene with a frustrated sigh. You gently nudge the dream around them. The cardboard turns to marble. The rain of worry slows. A cloud floats down beside them, a gentle, curious puff shaped vaguely like a baby goat. Eris pauses, pets it, smiles, and you enter the dream as yourself. "Hi," you say, "nice brushstrokes." They look at you. "Are you my inner critic?" "Worse," you reply, "I'm your inner collaborator." Ugh, the believe in yourself voice. "Not exactly. I just came from building a nap cloud for Zeus and had a stare down with the goddess of night, so I'm more like your art therapist."
In classical Greek art, clouds weren't always painted or carved. They were implied. Gods rode on them, dreams came through them, but they were rarely shown directly because depicting the divine was seen as a sacred challenge. Artists often used light, spacing, or even absence to suggest clouds instead of drawing them. You walk with Eris through their evolving dreamscape. They show you sketches of Hera on a cumulus throne, Apollo playing a harp made of vapor, and Artemis hunting through a fog made of whispers. Each piece glows faintly with ambition and disappointment. "They all feel fake," Eris mutters, "like I'm copying from stories instead of telling one." You smile. Maybe you're trying to remember what clouds felt like before they were divine. They blink. What does that mean? You touch the dream. The gods fade. The sketchbooks melt into mist, and a new scene rises. Not Olympus, not myth, just sky. Open, vast, unedited. A quiet hill where a younger Eris once lay staring up, naming cloud shapes with a grandmother who knew every Greek story by heart. The two of them laughing about Zeus's weird love life and trying to find Hades in a passing nimbostratus. The dream slows, warms. Eris kneels beside the memory. "I forgot this." You nod. That's where your cloud project starts. Fringe tidbit time. Some Hellenistic poets believed that clouds were the laughter of gods who didn't want to cry, a kind of divine camouflage, humor hiding sadness, or mist hiding meaning. Cloud shapes were omens, jokes, or private messages between heavens and earth. Eris begins to sketch again. Not the gods, just clouds. Weird ones. Ones that look like broken statues or melted wings. One shaped like a harp caught in a thunderstorm. One shaped like a question mark on fire. They're beautiful. You watch quietly as the dream becomes a studio. Easels rise from the floor. Paint flows from the walls. The cardboard anxiety house becomes a cathedral of ink and air. Kelvin whispers, "This is actually kind of moving, right?" The dream winds down. Eris sighs, content this time. They sit beside you, legs swinging into nothingness. "I think I know how to finish my project," they say. "It won't be accurate, but it'll be true." "Truth is cloud-shaped anyway," you reply. "It shifts, but it still shades you." Mainstream debate moment. Scholars still argue whether myths were meant to explain or experience. Were the stories of the gods educational tools, moral fables, or just elaborate fan fiction shared around the ancient dinner table? Even in antiquity, people couldn't agree. Eris reaches into the mist and pulls out a cloud that looks like an eraser. "One last thing," they say. "Can you delete the part where I cried because I thought my sculpture looked like a potato?" You nod. Already gone. They grin. The dream dissolves into color. And you float back out, holding a sketch, one Eris forgot to take. A cloud shaped like someone hugging themselves. You slip it into your pocket. Kelvin grins. "So, what next?" You stretch. "We've helped gods, soothed artists, and possibly rewired the subconscious of a sleep-deprived civilization." A new ping. This one's lighter, like a joke that forgot its punchline.
"Oh no," Kelvin groans. "You already know what it is." You whisper, "Dionysus again?" He nods, and off you float, toward a wine-soaked dreamscape where logic takes its lunch break and sanity is just a dance move with bad rhythm. Because even party gods need bedtime stories.
You drift sideways through dream space, spiraling gently like someone dropped a feather into carbonated soda. The edges of reality begin to fizz. Colors shift without warning. Your sense of direction shrugs and goes on break. Kelvin is clinging to your hoodie like a koala with trust issues. This, he says, is not how gravity is supposed to behave. You're upside down, maybe, but also inside out emotionally, which makes sense because you've just arrived in the dream of Dionysus, the god of wine, revelry, questionable fashion, and naps that turn into dance parties. His dream isn't a single scene, it's a roving carnival of sensations. Smells like grape juice and sandalwood. Sounds like a flute being played by a goat who's also arguing about Play-Doh. Feels like velvet and spilled secrets. You land, sort of, on a floating chaise lounge made entirely of grapes. The dream instantly reacts to your presence. Confetti falls upward. A satyr offers you a cheese cube that turns into a tiny poem when bitten. Then, with a dramatic trumpet flourish that comes from nowhere and everywhere, "Hello, cloud person!" Dionysus appears, wearing a toga that's definitely made from yesterday's disco ball. His crown of ivy is glowing faintly. There are olives in his goblet, which seems wrong on several levels. "I've been waiting for you," he says, arms wide. "Also, I forgot why, but it's important." You blink. "Is this about your cloud again?" "Yes," he says, twirling like a ballerina who's been told they're also a tornado. "But now I have a new vision. I want a dream cloud that plays music, and also serves snacks, and also transforms into a flying tiger if the vibes demand it." Kelvin's tiny wings twitch. "I knew I shouldn't have installed the Vibes plugin." You sigh and float after Dionysus as he prances through a landscape made of stage lights, glowing vines, and giant sleepy peacocks that seem to be judging you with their feathers. Mainstream fact moment. In actual Greek myth, Dionysus was more than a party boy. He represented ecstasy, freedom, and the loosening of societal norms. His cult rituals were infamous for blending trance, performance, and spiritual release, especially among women who found liberation through the god's chaotic joy. You follow Dionysus to what appears to be a giant mechanical lyre attached to a trampoline. He gestures dramatically. "This," he announces, "is the baseline of the cloud." You're about to object when the lyre plays a deep, soothing hum that makes your bones feel like they're melting into beanbags. Okay, that part's actually very good. Then the trampoline launches you 30 feet into the air and you land on a bed made of croissants. The dream is unstable, shifting between absurdity and serenity. One moment you're being chased by a dancing olive, the next you're in a candlelit amphitheater listening to a poem about rain composed entirely of giggles. "Dionysus," you say, catching your breath as a giraffe made of fog strolls by, "what is this really about?" He stops. For a heartbeat, the entire dream pauses, like someone hit mute on the universe. The god looks down at his goblet. Then, softly, "I used to be worshipped with songs, with dance, with freedom." You nod. "And now?" "Now," he says, "I'm a punchline, a drunk uncle at the godly reunion. Zeus gets the thunder, Athena gets the libraries. I get memes and awkward party photos." He sighs. "You know, I was born twice, right?" "That's true. Dionysus had one of the strangest births in mythology. After his mother Semele was incinerated by Zeus's divine form, Zeus saved the unborn Dionysus by sewing him into his thigh until he was ready to be born again. It's kinda beautiful and weird." but mostly weird. You sit beside him on a cloud shaped like a chaise lounge mixed with a conch shell. "I think," you say, "you're scared of being irrelevant." He looks at you. "I think," he replies, "you're not wrong." You close your eyes. "Then let's make a cloud that remembers." Not flashy, not silly, but true. You raise your hands and begin weaving the dream elements together. The grapes become musical notes. The velvet turns into a soundscape of laughter and longing. The trampoline dissolves into soft drum beats. The croissant bed becomes a hammock of warm rhythms. The centerpiece? A floating lounge cloud, shimmering softly in violet and gold, humming a lullaby composed of every story, every song, every breathless moment someone forgot their worries in the name of joy. Dionysus smiles. A real one this time, not dramatic, not ironic, just grateful. "Can I name it?" "Of course," he thinks. "Cloud 9 or cloud wine?" You groan, he laughs. Mainstream scholarly debate alert. Historians still argue whether Dionysian rituals were truly spiritual or just ancient excuses to party. Some say the ecstatic worship offered real transcendence. Others think it was organized chaos to break social tension. Probably both, like karaoke, but mythic. Kelvin flutters over with a sleepy peacock on his back. "I hate to interrupt the emotional growth," he says, "but there's a dream up next that's not godly." You look up, a gentle pulse. This one isn't flashy or panicked. It's quiet, a soft, earthy glow. You nod at Dionysus. "Thanks for the wine." He bows. "Thanks for the cloud." And with that, you rise again, sailing toward the next dream. One grounded not in Olympus, but in olives, stone streets, and forgotten lullabies. Back to Earth, back to a village that remembers. The dizziness of Dionysus fades like glitter in a bathtub, slowly, sparkly, and vaguely sticky. You blink twice and float into something entirely different. Gone are the bouncing peacocks and musical croissants. The air now smells of thyme, dust, and wood smoke. Dream space settles into a slower rhythm, like an old song hummed by someone with no one left to sing it to. You touch down softly on a sun-warmed cobblestone path. There are clay pots lining the houses, painted with swirling cloud patterns. Fig trees lean lazily over balconies. Somewhere nearby, someone is baking bread. The dream belongs to someone older. You see her in a courtyard, an old woman seated in a wicker chair. She hums to herself, knitting something that might be a shawl or a storm cloud. A lazy cat sprawls across her feet like a nap with fur. You recognize her immediately. Not from myth, from memory. Her name is Yia Eleni. She is not a goddess. She's the grandmother of a boy who once built cloud shapes out of bread dough and whispered stories into the olive trees. She once told tales of Zeus and Hera, but only after scolding you for tracking mud into the kitchen. She doesn't know this is a dream, but she's dreaming all the same. You sit beside her, quietly. The dream adapts. A cup of tea appears in your hand, warm and full of thyme and lemon. The kind of tea that knows how to listen. "I remember the clouds," Eleni says, without looking at you. "They used to arrive in the afternoons, right after the school bell, right before the chores." You nod. "What were they like?" She smiles. "Lazy, proud. They took their time. Didn't rush to rain, just watched." The dream shifts. You're now on a hilltop with a young Eleni, her braids whipping in the breeze. She's maybe 10, maybe immortal. She's showing her little brother how to name the clouds. Not cumulonimbus or cirrus, but names like Hercules' pillow and the whispering goat. Mainstream fact drop. In rural Greek villages, especially on islands, storytelling traditions preserved myth long after temples crumbled. Grandparents would blend Homer with local gossip, turning gods into neighbors and clouds into omens. These oral traditions often carried more myth than scripture. Back then,
Young Eleni says, everyone knew the clouds were watching. Watching what? Us, to see who deserved a cool breeze. Back in the present courtyard, Eleni stops knitting. She picks up a stone from beside her chair, smooth, oval, cloud white. She hands it to you. For the gods, she says, so they don't forget. You look closely. The stone has a carving, a crude swirl, like a fingerprint or a tiny hurricane.
In some obscure mountain villages, old Greek women used to collect cloud stones, pale, weather-worn rocks thought to be fragments of sky fallen to earth. They'd place them by doorways to keep storms gentle and keep gossip from growing legs. Eleni leans back. My grandson thinks I'm silly. He's wrong, you say. You're cloud royalty. She chuckles. Tell that to my rheumatism. The dream begins to fade. You can feel her slipping toward waking, not suddenly, but softly, like a candle that knows when the story's done. You stand. Will you visit again? She asks, not turning her head. I think I already have, you whisper. She nods, and the dream peels back into stars. Kelvin appears, still chewing on something that looks suspiciously like an olive-flavored marshmallow. That was tender, he says. You nod. No gods this time, just memory and tea. The next dream pulses from below, deeper, denser. It feels like stone and ink. Ready? Kelvin asks. You float downward, past layers of sleep thicker than myth, into a dream forged not in temples, but in libraries. Because someone, somewhere, is dreaming through history. And they're about to ask the question no god ever wants to answer. What really happened? Mainstream scholarly debate moment. Historians still argue over how much of Greek mythology was literal belief versus symbolic teaching. Were the gods seen as real, or were they just elaborate stand-ins for weather, emotion, and cosmic patterns? Even ancient philosophers debated it. You descend into the mind of a scholar who dreams not in visions, but in footnotes. And even clouds here must defend themselves.
You land on marble. Not Olympus marble. There are no grand columns or lounging immortals here. This marble is dusty, cracked at the edges, and surrounded by stacks of parchment and clay tablets. It smells of ink, beeswax, and arguments. You've entered the dream of a historian, a very serious one. He's pacing a lecture hall built inside a cloud. Yes, even in his dreams, this guy builds logic into his surroundings. The cloud is neatly labeled Nimbus Hypothesis 4b. The chairs are occupied by ghosts of old philosophers, all silently judging his PowerPoint slides, which are made of lightning and speculation. Kelvin whispers, I think he alphabetizes his own nightmares. The man in question clears his throat. Ladies and, well, mostly shades of deceased skepticism, I am here to unravel the true origins of the so-called cloud contest myth. You wince. Here we go. This historian, let's call him Professor Antheos, wears a robe dusted with chalk. He turns toward a floating blackboard and begins scribbling diagrams. There are timelines, cloud shapes, suspicious goat patterns. First, he says, we must dismiss the obvious fantasy. No pantheon would waste divine deliberation on clouds. Clearly, this tale was created as metaphor. He circles the word metaphor like it owes him money. You raise your hand. But what if the gods did care about clouds? He gives you a look usually reserved for misbehaving undergrads and unsalted hummus. No serious deity concerns themselves with atmospheric fluff, he declares. Now, moving on, we have three major theories. He gestures with a pointer made of petrified logic. Theory 1, political allegory. The cloud dispute mirrors early democratic processes in city-states like Athens. Each god represents a different civic priority: storm control, wisdom, beauty, trickery. And the cloud is the public good. Whoever wins the cloud wins influence. Mainstream fact: ancient Greek myths were often retold to fit political agendas. Athenian dramatists, for example, used old stories to comment on democracy, war, and public ethics. They didn't invent the gods, they remixed them for their own time. Theory 2, Antheos says, adjusting his spectacles, is economic. The cloud represents a resource, perhaps rain or shade or divine approval, that affects agricultural success. Hence the heated competition. Kelvin perks up. So, crop insurance, but make it myth? Precisely. And theory 3, the professor says, dramatically dimming the cloud room, is that the myth wasn't about gods at all. It was about us, humans, trying to understand weather patterns. The gods were a convenient personification for forces we couldn't predict. He spins. Tell me, who really benefits from naming a cloud after Aphrodite? You blink. Poets? Wrong. Priests. The ones who claimed divine favor based on sky patterns.
Fringe tidbit, a 2nd century fragment from a philosopher named Diogenes Minor, no relation to the more famous barrel dweller, that describes cloud dreams as omens read by temple astrologers to determine everything from crop rotation to wedding dates. No one agrees if it's real or satire. The room begins to shift. The ghost philosophers murmur. Professor Antheos clutches his notes. We must separate myth from meaning, fantasy from function. But the dream clouds above begin to melt, slowly at first, then faster. Diagrams blur. The chalkboard evaporates into mist. You take a step forward. Maybe, you say gently, the point isn't to separate them. He squints. Meaning? What if the cloud story isn't about politics or agriculture or metaphors? You gesture around. What if it's just a bedtime story, one that made kids laugh and adults feel less small, a way to bring the sky down to a reachable height? Antheos shakes his head, but he's listening. Kelvin adds, you know, for people who didn't have Doppler radar or therapy. The dream begins to change. The floating lecture hall dissolves. You now stand in a child's room from centuries ago. Clay oil lamp, a wool blanket, a parent, maybe a father, maybe a grandmother, sitting on the edge of a simple bed. They're telling a story about gods who argue over clouds. The child giggles. Did Hermes really try to sell the cloud? Of course, the storyteller says, and Hera tried to tax it. And Zeus? Zapped it into a sheep shape, naturally. The child laughs so hard they fall sideways. Professor Antheos watches, silent. His robe seems lighter now. I never considered this angle, he murmurs. You smile. Not everything needs to be decoded. Some stories are soft on purpose. Mainstream scholarly debate. To this day, scholars disagree on whether myths evolved organically from folktales or were strategically crafted by religious elites. The truth is probably messy. Myths, like clouds, shift shape depending on how you look at them. The dream fades to parchment tones. As you float upward again, you hear Antheos quietly muttering to himself, "Cloud as comfort, cloud as cradle." And Kelvin whispers, "Cloud as clue?" You both nod, because something is rising ahead, a dream you didn't expect. Not divine, not mortal, not even really Greek. It smells like pixels and disappointment, and very bad sound quality. Oh no, you say. Kelvin shudders. You've entered the YouTube comment section. You land with a thud. Not a graceful, mythic descent, more like falling into a beanbag made of used ramen packets and sarcasm. Welcome to the dreamscape of the modern world, the YouTube comment section, a place where logic goes to cry and spelling is purely optional. The walls are holographic, the sky is buffering. Everything smells faintly of energy drinks and poor life choices. Neon emojis drift by like confused fireflies. A giant floating thumbs-up icon casts a pale blue light over the chaos. You look around. Kelvin groans. Oh great, we're in the land of eternal opinions. A disembodied voice shrieks from above, "First!" Another shouts, "This story's fake! Zeus was a lizard! Wake up, sheeple!" And from somewhere deep in the dream, a reply echoes, "Okay, boomer." You walk forward slowly, pushing past a spinning wheel that says, "Loading more comments forever." The voices swirl around you. Greek mythology is just Marvel with sandals. Actually, Hermes was non-binary. Prove me wrong. Clouds aren't real. They're made by planes. Wake up, sheeple. Bro, this made me cry. My hamster used to love clouds. Oh, R.I.P. Nimbus. Somewhere between outrage and emotional whiplash, you spot it. A quiet patch of stillness. A single comment, glowing softly. It reads, "I used to listen to stories like this with my granddad under a blue sky. Thanks for helping me remember." You pause. Kelvin wipes an imaginary tear from his metal cheek. "Okay," he sniffs. "Maybe the comment section's not all bad." You move forward, dodging a rogue conspiracy theory shaped like a giant pigeon. The dream begins to tilt, gently, towards something softer. Voices lower, lights dim. A new message appears, typed slowly by invisible hands. Where did the clouds go? Another pops up beneath it. Do the gods miss us? Then, is there still magic in the sky? You reach a clearing where the digital melts into mist. No emojis, no caps lock. Just the quiet hum of dreams wanting to be remembered. You lie down. For the first time tonight, you're not a guest in someone else's dream. This one is yours. Above you, the clouds gather. Not dramatic Olympus clouds or coded allegories, just clouds. Soft, slow, and a little disorganized. A lopsided heart shape drifts by. It's chased by one that looks suspiciously like a pancake wearing a cape. You smile. Mainstream fact? In modern Greece, especially in rural areas, people still tell myths casually, over coffee, under balconies, beside old stone chapels. They might not believe them literally, but they believe in the comfort they bring. The stories have become emotional landmarks. Fringe tidbit: there's a niche online forum where people upload cloud photos and try to assign them to ancient deities. A cumulus shaped like a goat? Pan. Wispy line shaped like a quill? Probably Hermes. No one takes it seriously, except maybe one guy named ZeusFan92. Kelvin appears beside you. "Ready for the last bit?" he asks. You nod. Because here it comes. The final cloud. It's massive, glowing gold at the edges like it swallowed a sunset. Inside, shapes flicker, faces you recognize. Hermes raving, Athena adjusting her glasses, Dionysus passed out on a grape floaty. Even Hades sighing deeply and holding a sign that says, "Do not disturb." The cloud pulses once, like a heartbeat. You feel something settle in your chest. Not a moral, not a grand thesis, just a warmth. Like memory, like fog on a quiet morning, like a story told over and over, not because it's true, but because it feels like home. The dream slows. Time begins to stretch, like taffy in slow motion. You hear the final scholarly whisper. Historians still argue whether stories like this were ever meant to survive. But here you are, still dreaming them, still smiling, still looking up. And now it's time to let go. Wind down. So now, as your eyes begin to feel heavier and the weight of your own breath keeps you gently tethered to the space beneath your blanket, let it all begin to soften. Let the voices of the gods, the mischief of Hermes, the quiet of Hestia, and even the chaotic genius of Dionysus all drift into a distant, happy fog behind your thoughts. There's no rush anymore,
No trials, no footnotes, no cloud arguments to untangle. Just the hush of your own heartbeat and the hum of whatever fan or breeze is near. The sky is still there above you, even if you're tucked away inside a quiet room. The clouds still float by, dreaming their own dreams, shifting shapes only visible to those willing to slow down and look up. You've walked across Olympus and old mountaintops, wandered through libraries and dance halls, chased strange shadows across centuries, all with just your breath and a bit of patience. Now it's time to let even that go. Let your muscles loosen, let your jaw unclench, let your mind settle like the last snowflake on a quiet hillside. And in the hush that follows, remember this: not every story needs to make sense. Some are just meant to carry you gently from one side of sleep to the other. So sleep now. You've earned it. Let the clouds carry you. And if they don't, well, you can always steal Hermes' ride.